The prosperity of Job. In a land far away beyond the deserts and the hills lived a man named Job. He was known as a good man, trustworthy and kind. People said he was peaceful in his heart, and they admired the way he cared for his family and neighbors, always gentle and thoughtful. Job lived in a place called Uz. It was a quiet land with trees and fields, where animals grazed calmly under the soft, warm sun. The earth was fertile, and the rivers flowed steadily, bringing life to the land. In this peaceful setting, Job's life went on with a calm rhythm, like the gentle breeze that ruffles the leaves. Job was a man of great wealth, though his richness was not just in money or possessions. He had a large family, many children who loved him dearly. His children would gather together often, sharing meals and laughter, their voices filling the home with warmth. It's said that Job's sons and daughters enjoyed one another's company, for they took turns hosting feasts, inviting each other into their homes. His coat of riches included many animals too, thousands of sheep and goats, herds of camels, and cattle roaming over the hills. These animals were cared for by many servants, some watching over the flocks at night, others tending to the herds by day. In this way, Job's household was large and busy, but peaceful, a place where life moved with quiet purpose. Job was a man who respected the ways of his people. He would rise early, offering prayers in the soft morning light, and he taught his children to live with kindness. At times, he would also make offerings, acts of devotion that were part of his faith and tradition. People around him saw Job as a man with a good heart, and his life was marked by careful attention to his family, his faith, and his duties. Now, beyond the quiet life of Job and his home, there was a scene in the heavens. Here the story gently whispers a different kind of scene, one of a meeting among the heavenly beings. It is a place where divine conversations take place, conversations we cannot see or fully understand, but that are as real as the stars in the night sky. In this heavenly meeting, there was mention of Job, the one they called the blameless and upright, a man who walked carefully, avoiding harm and seeking to do right. The tale says that at this time, a figure known as Satan was present among the celestial beings. This is not the harsh figure we sometimes imagine, but rather a kind of challenger or questioner, one who tests and examines. The challenger asked if Job's goodness was without cause, suggesting perhaps that Job was faithful only because his life was filled with blessings. The question hung quietly in the air, like a breath waiting to be released. Could Job remain true if those blessings were taken away? This is uncertain and delicate, a mystery quietly held in the story. That Job might face trials, not to break him, but perhaps to see how deep his trust truly ran. The tale gently turns back to the earth, where Job's life continued in the morning sun, unaware of what might be to come. Suddenly, news came to Job's home. A servant arrived, breathless and wide-eyed. He told of a raiding band that had come through the nearby lands, a harsh wind that had swept across the fields and herds. The sheep and some of the servants were taken or lost. The servant's voice trembled as he spoke, and Job listened quietly, feeling the weight of the words. Then another messenger appeared, with more news of loss. This time it was about the camels, taken or scattered like the desert sands. One after another, the messengers came, each bringing news of hardship, the loss of cattle, the fall of servants, and then the most heavy news of all. Job's children, gathered in one house, had been caught in a terrible storm. The walls collapsed. They were gone. In this moment, Job's heart was touched by sorrow, yet he did not break into anger or despair. In a quiet voice, he said words that carried a gentle weight. "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." His grief was not a loud cry, but a calm acceptance, like the soft falling of autumn leaves. Friends would one day speak of this calm, this strength, this moment when suffering came close, yet Job's spirit held steady. Even after these losses, Job's life was not ended. His days went on, shaded now with sadness, but still full of meaning. The story tells that he did not sin by blaming or turning away, but held to his way, quiet, steady, and thoughtful. Now, with less property and fewer possessions, Job's situation had changed. The servants who remained saw that their master was still a man of dignity, though his wealth was no longer the same. Job's family had been reduced in number, yet his heart remained open. To Job's outer world had come great change, but his inner life was one of reflection and deep feeling. His story quietly asks us to imagine the tender moments, the way he might have sat by the fire as twilight settled, the way he might have looked up at the stars, thinking of his children, and the goodness of life before the shadow. Through all this, the story moves slowly, lovingly, inviting rest and meditation. Job's life, rich and then tested, is a dance between blessing and trial, a whisper of something beyond simple understanding. The days that followed were hard and silent in many ways, and Job's quiet presence was like a steady flame in the darkening evening. Friends would come to visit, drawn by the news of his suffering, and they would sit with him, each bringing their own thoughts and concerns. Their words would be gentle, though sometimes puzzled, for they sought to understand the pain of a man so blameless. Job, with kindness still in his gaze, welcomed these friends. They ate together, shared stories, and sometimes spoke softly of the ways of life and the ways of God. But the questions were many, and the answers were not always clear. In the gentle unfolding of this story, we sense that Job's life is a slow journey, marked by quiet endurance. His name would be remembered, not just for his loss, but for his heart, his depth, and the calm dignity with which he faced the unfolding days. And so, under the vast sky of Uz, the story lingers for a moment on this man named Job, a man both wealthy and humble, joyful and sorrowful, steady in his ways, and strong in spirit. Though we do not yet know what comes next in his journey, we hold this moment close, a moment of quiet strength, deep sorrow, and tender hope, all woven gently into the fabric of a life well lived. As the night falls softly on the land, and the stars begin to sparkle like distant promises, Job's story rests, inviting us to breathe slowly, to relax, and to rest in the quiet beauty of this ancient tale. Days turned to weeks. The skies above Uz reflected an unhurried rhythm, clouds drifting slowly across the sun's gentle gaze. Job sat often beneath the wide tent flap, watching the flicker of the firelight dance with the growing shadows. His friends remained a quiet presence nearby, there for company, yet unsure if words could heal such a deep wound. When silence became too heavy, they spoke with soft voices. They pondered the nature of suffering and fate. They poured out thoughts of justice and divine will. Job listened. Sometimes he agreed. Often, he wrestled within himself for the right words to say. His pain was a language of its own, one that could not be neatly tied up in neat arguments. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the air held a stillness deeper than before. Job, with eyes weary yet searching, shared a thought that came gently from his heart. Shall we accept good from God and not accept adversity? His voice was calm, tender, without accusation. He spoke of the fragile balance of life, the blessings and the trials intertwined. His friends regarded him quietly. They felt the weight of his honesty and the complexity of his faith. They wished to comfort him but sometimes faltered, unsure of the boundary between wisdom and presumption. Days stretched on, and Job's physical suffering deepened, a painful affliction that marked his skin and wore his body thin. Yet, amid the frailty, his spirit remained, a faint but unyielding light. His eyes, once bright with laughter, now held a quiet wisdom carved by deep sorrow. A soft wind whispered through the empty spaces of the tent. Job's thoughts drifted. He pondered the vastness of creation, the stars that shone with steady light, the creatures that roamed the earth, the cycles of life beyond his understanding. How vast and mysterious was the God who shaped all things, the God who allowed suffering, but also granted moments of beauty and peace. His heart longed for answers, not simple ones, but a glimpse of the profound harmony hidden in the frayed threads of his existence, a hope that pain was not endless, that somewhere beyond hurt, restoration awaited. In the quiet hours, Job spoke aloud prayers that did not demand, but sought understanding. He asked not for escape, but for the strength to endure, to bear the weight of loss without bitterness, to find meaning in the depths of despair. His friends listened, their own doubts mingling with his words. They too had been changed by witnessing Job's suffering, not hardened, but humbled. They learned then that faith need not always be wrapped in certainty. He found peace, not the kind wrapped in certainty, but the kind born from acceptance. His friends came to visit less frequently now, as their own lives pulled them back into the swirl of daily needs. Yet when they met, there was no longer any pressing need to explain or defend. Words were simpler, conversations gentler. Together they sat in silence just as before. but now it carried a different weight, a soft confirmation that all had been seen and felt. The simplicity of shared presence became the most profound form of comfort. On a quiet morning, Job walked through his orchards as the sun rose, bathing the land in a gentle gold. He paused to feel the earth beneath his feet, rich and full of life. The same earth that had once seemed cold and indifferent now hummed with the steady rhythm of seasons. It spoke to him of renewal that was not just external, but also deeply within. In his heart, Job held no illusions that suffering was gone forever. Yet he had come to understand that suffering, like joy, was transient, a current flowing through the larger river of life. It did not define the whole. Instead, it was part of the texture, the pattern that gave depth and meaning to the simplest things, like the quiet growth of a seed underground before the first green leaf appears. When night came, it found him at peace. There were moments when memory stirred, shadows flickering along the edges of his mind. But those shadows no longer consumed or darkened his spirit. Instead, they were acknowledged with gentleness, allowed to pass like clouds drifting over a wide sky. In the stillness, he could hear the faint but unshakable pulse of grace, steady and sure beneath all change. One evening, as stars began to appear, Job spoke softly to his children gathered near. "Value not only what you hold in your hands," he said, his voice steady yet tender, "but cherish what is held in your heart, faith that walks patiently through the unknown, love that endures beyond loss, and hope that quietly awaits the dawn." His children listened with eyes reflecting both the innocence of youth and the wisdom passed down through trials. In their silence, Job felt the thread that connected them, past, present, and future, woven from the unseen strands of trust, resilience, and tender care. Thus life continued, not as a story of endless triumph or perfect peace, but as a humble unfolding. Job's days were marked by quiet work, moments of reflection, and shared gratitude. His spirit, once like a faint ember struggling against night, now burned with a calm steadiness, a light that neither glittered nor demanded, but simply was. His legacy grew not in wealth or grand deeds, but in the gentle lessons lived and taught. The measure of prosperity, he learned to say, is found less in abundance, and more in the capacity to endure with grace, to trust without certitude, and to love without condition. As the seasons turned again, Job's story settled softly into the landscape of his people. It became a quiet song sung by subtle winds and rustling leaves, a testimony not only to divine mercy, but also to the strength found within the human heart when tested. In the final hush of evening, when the world seemed to hold its breath, Job closed his eyes with a serene smile. He felt the presence of something greater, mysterious, vast, and deeply kind, wrapping around him like a gentle embrace. With that, he rested, knowing that his journey had brought him to a place of peace, not by escaping pain, but by walking through it with courage and trust. The prosperity of Job was not counted in silver or gold, but measured in the quiet dignity of a soul refined by trial, a heart illuminated by faith, and a life marked by the enduring grace of acceptance. And in this, true abundance was found. In the unfolding days that followed Job's return to quiet steadiness, life took on a rhythm both simple and profound. The seasons turned, painting his world with the subtle hues of change. Morning light filtered gently through the leaves of his orchard, casting dappled patterns upon the earth, where new fruit nestled among the branches. He wandered there frequently, feeling beneath his feet the soft pulses of growth and renewal, a silent assurance that life, despite its trials, continued its endless cycle. Though the ache of loss lingered like a faint echo, it no longer bound his spirit in chains of despair. Instead, it had softened into a patient companion, one that taught him about the fragile beauty of vulnerability. The days spent among his trees became moments of quiet communion, a sacred space where past suffering and present peace intertwined in delicate balance. His children, now growing into their own paths, often sought his counsel beneath the shade of the old fig tree. There, with voices hushed and hearts open, Job shared what the years had etched deeply within him. He spoke not of answers or easy resolutions, but of a kind of steadfastness that transcended understanding, of trust in a purpose greater than pain, and love that neither faltered nor faded. Those lessons, gentle as spring rain, nourished their spirits and wove through their lives like an unbreakable thread. Visitors became rarer, yet the moments of connection that remained carried a weight and warmth all their own. Friends who once came with words of judgment or persuasion now approached with humility and respect. In their silent presence, Job found a spaciousness that invited healing rather than debate. These gatherings were no longer battlegrounds of belief, but shared spaces of compassion, where each soul was allowed to rest without the demand for certainty or proof. At times, as twilight folded the sky into shades of indigo and gold, Job felt an overwhelming gratitude. Gratitude not rooted in the abundance of possessions, but in the richness of simple truths. The breath that filled his lungs, the earth beneath his feet, the steady pulse of life that continued despite everything. He understood deeply that true wealth was found not in what one held, but in what one surrendered, the gentle yielding to life's mysteries. The community around him, once wary and distant, gradually embraced the quiet transformation that had taken hold of Job. His example, marked by humility and grace, became a beacon for those wrestling with their own shadows. They came to see in him a reflection of strength born not of protest, but of surrender. His story whispered a different kind of hope, one that invited patience over haste, acceptance over resistance. In these later days, Job found joy in the small, tender moments. The laughter shared with his grandchildren as they chased butterflies through the orchard. The soft murmur of wind weaving through the branches. The gentle crackle of fire at evening, where stories flowed not from grand declarations, but from the intimate space between heartbeats. Each fragment of life offered a reminder that peace is not a destination, but a companion on the journey. Even as darkness approached, both in the lengthening nights and the quiet awareness of his own mortality, Job faced it with a serene courage. There was no fear in his eyes, only the calm acceptance of a man who had walked through storms and found beyond them a sky vast and unending. He felt ready to lay down the burdens carried for so long, knowing that what he had gathered was not weight, but wisdom. And when the moment came to rest, it was not an end marked by sorrow, but a gentle closing of a well-lived chapter. The legacy he left behind was not in gold or grand monuments, but in the hearts of those who had witnessed his journey, who had learned that blessing can rise from affliction, and that the deepest prosperity lies in the quiet surrender to life's unfolding. Thus the story of Job lived on, not as a tale of trials endured or riches restored, but as a tender testament to the enduring power of faith, love, and the peaceful acceptance that carries us through the unknown. In every silent breath and every whispered prayer, his spirit mingled with the wind and the earth, a quiet reminder that even amidst uncertainty, grace can be found. In the days that followed, the village spoke often of Job, not in the bustling chatter of busy markets, but in soft voices, carried on the evening breeze. His presence had shifted from a man burdened by grief to a steadfast mountain of quiet strength. People came less frequently now, yet their visits held a new reverence, like pilgrims honoring a sacred place. His children, grown and weathered by their own storms, carried forth the lessons they had gathered at his side. When they faced hardship, they remembered how he had embraced fragility without surrender, how he had turned pain into a whispered prayer rather than a shout. The stories of Job became the roots beneath the community's shared tree of endurance and hope. There was a sacred stillness in the orchard where Job had spent so many afternoons. The wind through the leaves seemed to murmur his name, a gentle hymn to resilience. The earth beneath his feet, soft with fallen leaves and rich with unseen life, held the secret of transformation, the quiet interchange of death and rebirth, sorrow and solace. In this soil, Job's spirit seemed to linger, not as ghost or grief, but as peace itself made tangible. His grandchildren, wide-eyed with wonder, would press their hands against the bark of the ancient trees, feeling warmth and life pulse through the wood. "Grandfather is here," they whispered, and in their hearts they believed it true. Through these small ones, Job's love echoed forward, pure and unending. Evenings brought a gentle glow to the horizon. Job would sit by the fire, its flames dancing like old memories mingling with new hope. The crackle and pop of burning wood was a lullaby, coaxing quiet reflections in those who watched. There was beauty in the simplicity of this light, a beacon not of grand achievements, but of enduring grace. As time made its steady passage, the villagers found themselves drawn inward, to their own fears and hopes, inspired by the example Job had set. Acceptance became not surrender, but a deep wellspring of courage. They learned that to hold space for pain, without letting it define them, was a gift they could give themselves. In the twilight of his days, Job's eyes held a calm brightness, like the last star visible before dawn. He faced the end not with despair, but with a serene readiness that whispered of peace beyond pain. His final breath was soft, like a leaf settling on the ground, natural, inevitable, and gentle. The village mourned not for the man they had lost, but celebrated the life he had lived, a life defined not by riches, but by the wealth of his spirit. They gathered beneath the ancient trees, sharing stories in silence, honoring the legacy etched in every quiet moment he had lived. And so Job's story lived on, not in towering monuments or distant tales, but in the tender, unspoken moments of those who carried his message forward. His faith unwavering yet gentle, his love steadfast and embracing, his acceptance a tranquil harbor in a sea of uncertainty. Nature, forever intertwined with his journey, held his spirit close. The trees bowed softly in the breeze, the earth beneath hummed with unseen life, and the sky stretched wide, a canvas for the unfolding story of human grace. In this tapestry of life, woven with threads of sorrow and hope, loss and renewal, Job's quiet strength remained a reminder. Even amid uncertainty, there exists a deep and abiding grace, a grace that carries us gently, a breath at a time, toward peace. With each passing season, the orchard deepened in meaning. Its branches, once bare and fragile, now bore fruit in patient abundance. Villagers who once regarded the place merely as a stretch of land came to see it as a sanctuary, a living testament to Job's quiet endurance. Beneath the dappled shade of the apple trees, stories were shared, prayers whispered, and solemn promises made to carry forward his spirit of calm strength. Job's grandchildren, born into a world shaped by the echoes of old pain, found solace in those very trees. They played where their father once had suffered, yet instead of sorrow, the orchard offered a gentle reassurance, a proof that life moves on, that roots can deepen even in the hardest soil. In their laughter and whispered secrets, Job's teachings took new shape. The children did not speak explicitly of the hardships, but their learned respect for silence and patience was evident. They observed the slow crawl of clouds across the sky, the steady unfurling of blossom petals, and in these simple acts, they felt the quiet pulse of resilience that their grandfather embodied. As Job aged, his steps grew slower, but the calm in his expression only deepened. Those who visited sensed something beyond mere peace, a soft acceptance, wrapped in an understanding that life, in all its fleeting beauty, must ultimately surrender to the natural cycle. Job's gaze often rested on the horizon where earth met sky, as if greeting an old friend whose arrival was neither feared nor hurried. In these final years, his presence was as much a blessing as a farewell. The village, once drawn to him out of curiosity or concern, now approached with a reverence fueled by gratitude. People came quietly, sometimes leaving a simple flower or a handful of earth at the edge of the orchard. Their gestures were small but laden with meaning, an unspoken acknowledgement of all Job had taught them about enduring with dignity. When the inevitable day arrived, the village felt the void deeply. Yet even in mourning, the people chose to celebrate. They gathered beneath the orchard's branches, sharing stories not of pain, but of the legacy Job had nurtured, a legacy of patient courage, of faith woven through suffering, and of an unshakable love that transcended grief. The ceremonies were understated, much like Job himself had been, filled with moments of silence and quiet reflection. Songs were sung softly, evoking the ebb and flow of the seasons, and prayers were offered for the continued flourishing of the community and the orchard alike. In the months that followed, the orchard became an even stronger symbol of life's enduring spirit. Visitors would come to sit in its shade, feeling the presence of Job as an unspoken warmth in the air. The cycles of bloom and harvest were no longer just natural rhythms. They were reminders that grace could be found in every turn of the wheel, in every renewal after loss. The children, now grown, carried Job's lessons forward in their own lives. They greeted uncertainty with quiet strength, chose kindness over bitterness, and found in their hearts a space for peaceful acceptance. The elders saw in them a reflection of Job's spirit, gentle, unwavering, and deeply rooted, assuring the continuity of what their father had begun long ago. Though no longer present in body, Job's essence lingered like morning mist, soft, pervasive, and full of life. His story became a quiet background song to the village's days, its melody felt in stillness and whispered in the rustling leaves. And so, the prosperity of Job lived on, not measured in material wealth or fleeting triumphs, but in the enduring grace that his life, his struggle, and his acceptance had bestowed upon those who loved him. In embracing the unknown with faith and courage, Job had gifted the world a gentle truth, that through the cycles of suffering and joy, the heart can find peace, and through that peace, true strength is born. With the seasons passing gently through their endless rotations, the orchard stood as a living chronicle of time's quiet passage. Each tree bore not only fruit, but also layers of history and hope, intertwined in an unspoken promise carried by the breeze to every corner of the village. Children, now grown and seasoned with their own stories of trials and triumphs, would often find themselves drawn back to the orchard's embrace. Under the broad canopy of branches they sought refuge when the world outside pressed too heavily on their shoulders. It was here they remembered Job, not through spoken words or elaborate narratives, but through the very air they breathed, calm, steady, and sure like the earth itself. In the cool hours of early morning, before the village stirred to life, an older woman, one of Job's daughters, would quietly tend to the rows of blossoming fruit trees. Her hands, gentle yet deliberate, moved through the leaves and branches, not out of mere obligation, but as a form of prayer. Each touch was a silent hymn, a living gratitude unfolding for a legacy too profound to be fully captured in language. Visitors from distant places, hearing whispers of the orchard's history, came seeking a glimpse of the peace Job's life had sown. They would walk slowly along the well-worn paths, eyes lowered or lifted to the sky in reverence. Often, without a word, they lowered themselves to the earth's cool embrace, feeling the pulse of the land beneath their palms. In those moments the orchard spoke louder than any voice, offering healing through its serene presence. The village had adopted rituals gentle in their simplicity. A soft thank you left at the orchard's edge, a small bundle of wildflowers, a few stones arranged carefully where Job's favorite tree had stood. These acts were quiet acknowledgments of a life lived with humility and unwavering strength. They wove the old man's spirit into the ongoing rhythm of existence, like heartbeats tending the communal soul. In one particular afternoon, an elder visitor from a distant town paused long beneath the arch of the oldest tree. Her fingers traced the rough bark as if reading a familiar script. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the slow, patient pulse that echoed Job's own endurance through seasons of hardship and grace. For a moment the world around her softened, the worries she carried faded in the orchard's gentle light. Stories were relayed in hushed tones around fires and kitchen tables, but they were less about the man's suffering and more about his quiet response to it. Patience, they said, strength without boastfulness, a steadfast faith that held on softly, like a moth's fragile wing fluttering against the vastness of night. In this way, Job's life became an unspoken lesson, an example woven into the village's fabric, a teaching passed through the heart rather than the tongue. As the years drew on and the world beyond the village shifted in its own rapid, often harsh ways, the orchard remained unchanged in its peaceful resolve. Children played under the dappled light, their laughter swelling like a gentle hymn. Grandchildren, and sometimes great-grandchildren, found new stories beneath the same branches, their fingers reaching for the same fruit. Carried forward in quiet continuity, the trees flourished along with the village, growing taller and stronger, their roots deepening into the soil enriched by years of care and silent reverence. Each bloom was an echo of past patience, each harvest a testament to a serenity earned not by ease, but by enduring faithfulness. In this shared sanctuary, sorrow was softened by acceptance, and pain was met with a calm that nurtured healing. The orchard taught that life's trials, while sometimes harsh and unbidden, need not define us. Instead, it was the response, a patient bowing to fate with unwavering hope, that shaped character and gave meaning. Sometimes at dusk, the villagers gathered quietly by the orchard's edge. They spoke little, preferring the language of the shadows and the rustling leaves. Their prayers rose as soft incense, a collective breath of gratitude for life's resilience and for the unyielding spirit of a man whose patience had blossomed into something larger than any single life. In the end, the prosperity of Job was not counted in riches, nor measured in grand monuments, but in the steady pulse of a community that grew in strength and grace because of him. His legacy was a living, breathing presence, as certain as the dawn and the quiet turning of the earth. And so, as seasons continued their gentle dance, the orchard remained, a sacred place of memory and hope, an enduring testament to the quiet power of faith and love. In its shade, many found comfort; in its fruit, sustenance; and in its stillness, the whisper of a life transformed by patience and unshakable heart. The prosperity of Job was, ultimately, the prosperity of all who walked beneath those trees, carrying forward a legacy woven in silence, blooming forever in the quiet strength of enduring love. Seasons unfurled their quiet cycles across the orchard. The soft breath of spring carried fresh blossoms to the trees, their pale petals alive with delicate hope. Summer arrived with warm golden light, thickening the foliage with deep greens and the gentle hum of life. Autumn dressed the orchard in fiery robes of amber and rust, before winter's hush laid a faint silver dust like a peaceful prayer upon the branches. Through all these seasons, the orchard remained a still heart, steadfast and serene. The visitors who wandered its treasured paths felt this calm pulse. They often paused beneath the broad canopy of Job's favorite tree, willing the moment to soften and expand. The quiet spread out around them like a gentle wave, inviting them to release burdens long carried. Children of the village grew up cradled in this sanctuary. They learned the stories of the orchard's namesake, not through grand words or dramatic retellings, but through the lived example quietly carried by their elders. The story was not one of tragic grief alone. It was a tale of something deeper, the patient resilience found in the steady turning of days, the quiet courage of enduring without losing one's spirit. One evening, as twilight sifted through the leaves and the village slowly settled into night, a group of young ones sat beneath the trees. Their small voices mingled with the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle whisper, telling stories passed down from their grandparents. They spoke not of curses or calamity, but of the stillness Job maintained amid turmoil, of the unseen strength that flourished like roots deep beneath the earth. An old woman, the village's keeper of quiet wisdom, joined them. She brushed a stray lock of silver hair behind her ear and smiled softly. "Look," she said, pointing toward the horizon where the first stars peeked out. "See how they steady themselves against the night sky, shining even when no one watches? That is the kind of light Job left for us. It is not always loud or bright, but it is steady and true." The children nodded, their eyes wide with understanding beyond their years. In these moments, the garden's teaching unfolded simply: to hold faith beneath troubles unseen, to nurture hope silently, and to live in the grace of patient endurance. As years slipped quietly past, the orchard became a place of more than memory. It grew into a palpable presence in the life of the village itself, a living testament to the faith that Job's story inspired. Families planted new trees alongside the old, each sapling a symbol of fresh hope and renewal. Neighbors gathered for celebrations beneath the boughs, sharing the gifts of the earth and the comfort of shared silence. Often travelers from afar continued to find their way there, drawn not just by the tales but by an ineffable sense that this place held a secret balm. Some arrived burdened by sorrow, others by weariness, and all left carrying a quiet reassurance, as if the orchard's gentle spirit had whispered to them across the stillness. One afternoon, a young woman lingered longer than most beneath the grand tree. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dancing shadows on her face. She reached out to touch the bark, smooth and warm beneath her fingertips, and closed her eyes. A soft breath escaped her lips as a wave of peace settled over her heart. Though her journey was just beginning, she felt already woven into the gentle legacy that the orchard carried, one of unwavering hope and quiet grace. That legacy, however, was not bound to mere sentiment. It thrived in the small acts of daily kindness the villagers extended to one another. Helping hands reached out in times of hardship without expectation or boast. Words of encouragement were shared as breath, light and nourishing. These simple threads, spun from the fabric of Job's example, wove tightly the tapestry of community. In the orchard's stillness, generations found their own reflections and lessons. Elder couples walked hand in hand beneath the filtered sunlight. Children played among the roots and flowers, and young lovers whispered promises of tomorrow into the leaves. All movements happened with reverence, as if the very air itself carried the weight of something sacred. On quiet mornings, when mist hovered low, the orchard was sometimes filled with the soft tapping of birds and the gentle stir of awakening life. It was in these moments, delicate and unassuming, that the full measure of Job's prosperity could be glimpsed. not in gold or grand monuments, but in the harmony that enfold every living thing beneath the branches. It was said the orchard taught not just endurance, but acceptance of life's rhythms, its joys and sorrows held in balance. Like the trees that bent but did not break in the wind, so too did the village learn to bow with grace to the inevitable cycles of change. As dusk gathered one evening, a delicate calm settled over the gathering crowd. Families, elders, and visitors alike stood in reverent silence. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves above, carrying with it the faint scent of wildflowers left by unseen hands. In that hushed communion, the spirit of Job was present, not as a distant memory, but as a pulsing life force, knitting together past and future. The village healer, a woman known for her quiet strength, whispered softly, "Here is where faith blooms eternal, not in loud declarations or sudden miracles, but in the steady unfolding of love and patience, year by year, season by season." And so the orchard stood, a quiet guardian beneath the shifting sky, a place where the lessons of a life well lived blossomed forever in the hearts of those who paused long enough to hear. Job's story, once thought defined by suffering, was now known as a testament to the strength that rises from standing firm in the face of the unseen, to the peace found in patient hope. In this way, the prosperity of Job was not counted in silver or soil rich with harvest, but measured in the warmth of shared stories, the kindness exchanged, and the unbroken circle of community knitting itself ever tighter beneath the orchard's watchful boughs. The night deepened, stars shimmering quietly overhead, and the village rested wrapped in gratitude. Somewhere, a single leaf drifted down, its slow descent a gentle promise that the legacy of love and endurance would continue to grow, rooted deep in the hearts of all who loved beneath the orchard's shade. Seasons moved in their quiet procession, painting the orchard with new colors, new textures. Job's trees, sturdy and strong, continued to stand as sentinels, not only of earth and rain, but of time, memory, and presence. Roots sunk deep, unseen, below the soil, binding the past and present, like the shared hearts of the villagers who gathered beneath their boughs. In the mornings, soft light filtered through leaves, sprinkling gold on faces weathered by sun and kindness. The air bore the faint scent of blossoms and ripening fruit, grounding breath after breath in silent reassurance. Even in the stirring of a breeze, there was a careful, deliberate peace, a silent lull where rushing gave way to presence. Children learned to move gently among the trees, their small hands tentatively touching bark, feeling the textures shaped by years of growth and care. Their laughter, bright but hushed, mingled with the whispering leaves, an offering to the orchard's quiet spirit. Sometimes an elder would call the children close, their voice low and even, weaving stories into the fabric of the day, stories of Job, of resilience and patient faith, of a soul unbroken by storm. In the heart of the village, the healer's humble home stood framed by the orchard's shade, gathering herbs with reverence, her hands steady with love. Her voice was a murmur as she shared the small gifts of the earth with those who came seeking peace. "Faith is not loud," she would say. "It is the steady breath beneath the gale. It is the warmth under frost. It is the quiet hand in the darkness." Visitors continued to arrive, drawn not only by tales, but now by the living pulse of the place itself. They came to sit beneath the great tree, to listen with open hearts, and to carry the orchard's gentle strength back into their own lives. No words were necessary, only the feeling of something held, something protected, something endlessly shared. A soft murmur of evening prayers would stir the village as dusk deepened. Families gathered once more beneath the canopy, hands clasped or resting gently on knees, eyes lifted to the stars beginning to peek through the twilight. Here, in this fold of sky and earth, there was no rush, no clamor, only the steady, unbroken cadence of belonging. Voices spoke of gratitude, voices spoken in silence, a communion not of many words, but of shared breath and beating hearts. The orchard listened. It held the prayers and hope like a map, never lost, never hidden, always present in the stillness. One night, as moonlight wove silver threads through the leaves, the young woman who had once been drawn beneath the tree felt a quiet certainty settle deep inside. Her path had unfolded in gentle steps, marked by small acts of care, by moments of patience and grace. She saw now that the legacy of Job was alive in every gesture of kindness, every moment of endurance lived without complaint, every whisper of love that stirred unseen in the village's pulse. The cycles of life, growth, decay, renewal, were no longer abstract lessons but an embodied truth. The orchard was not just a place but a living story, carried in every hand extended, every meal shared, every silent vigil kept for those in sorrow and those in hope. With dawn's early light, the village stirred once more. The harvest came gently, fruit falling soft into waiting hands, each piece a gift given and received with quiet thanks. Children chased each other through the rows of trees, their joy as light as the breeze. Elders sat in the shade, their faces soft with remembrance, their eyes reflecting the steady glow of enduring faith. In the woman's heart, a simple understanding took root, that prosperity, true prosperity, was not measured in wealth or size, but in the strength of connection, the patience of love, and the quiet hope that grows beneath the surface. It was a blessing deeper than fortune, longer lasting than the brightest day. The village, once marked by hardship and loss, now thrived quietly in ways that no gold could buy. Its heartbeat was steady, its breath was calm, its roots were deep, and the orchard, under ever-changing skies, held fast to the stories, the kindness, the enduring legacy that had begun with Job, who had lost much, and yet had never lost himself. As the sun set gently beyond the distant hills, a cool hush softly enveloped the village. The stars came out, faint yet steady, like watchful eyes, and beneath the grand tree, the community settled into a stillness full of gratitude. Here, in this moment, life was held tenderly, the endless journey moving forward in quiet grace. The prosperity of Job lived on, not as a tale of loss or gain, but as a song of patient hope, enduring strength, and love that neither time nor trial could dim. This was the orchard's gift, a place where roots intertwined, stories were cradled, and every heart found a home. And so the legacy continued, gentle as the falling leaf, steady as the turning seasons, bound forever in the quiet prosperity of a soul that had known suffering and had become a wellspring of light. Seasons shifted once again, tenderly enfolding the village in their timeless rhythm. Cool mornings unfolded soft mists, pooling over fields where dew lingered on grass and fruit. Under the wide arms of the orchard's great tree, life moved with gentle certainty, unhurried yet purposeful. The village, a quiet symphony of small moments and shared labor, continued to hum the gentle song of survival polished by grace. Each dawn the healer rose with the sun's blush, stepping barefoot into the cool earth. Her hands, steady and sure, brushed through rows of herbs that danced lightly in the breeze. She gathered with care, soft leaves of mint, fragrant sprigs of lavender, bright petals from calendula, that whispered their silent remedies. Every leaf was plucked not with haste, but with reverence, a quiet communion between healer and earth. Visitors came on light feet, their faces shadowed by weariness, their hearts searching. They found their way beneath the vast branches of the orchard's great tree, where they could sit and breathe in the mingled scents of bark, blossom, and fresh earth. Conversations ripened slowly here, flowering with memories, hopes, and the gentle warmth of shared presence. Among the village children, stories of Job were told as a soft undercurrent, flowing amidst laughter and clatter. The tales were never rushed or heavy, but woven gently into daily life, hidden in the patience of waiting for fruit to ripen, in the steady tending of the fields, in the kindness given without expectation. In their wide-eyed wonder, the children absorbed not only the story's trials, but its quiet strength, the steadfast heart that endured beyond suffering. Evening descended as a hush, the sky turning tender shades of rose melting into deep indigo. The village gathered once more, their voices rising together in prayer, a song of gratitude that echoed softly against the orchard's canopy, stretching out like a warm blanket over the land and its people. They spoke quietly of peace, of healing, of hope that outlasted hardship, the steady light that had guided them through dark days. Within the orchard, the great tree listened. Its leaves shimmered with each whispered prayer, holding them like secret treasures amid the steady pulse of its roots. It kept the stories buried deep within its bark, the whispered sorrows, the shared joys, the endurance of a people bound by more than place, but by heart and spirit. The seasons turned, and the village learned the tender art of embracing both joy and loss with open hands. The orchard bore fruit again, heavy with abundance that fed not only the body, but the communal spirit. Families gathered beneath its shade, sharing meals seasoned with laughter and softened by memories. Elders drank slowly from their cups, their eyes reflecting the steady flicker of years, passing down wisdom knitted through time. In quiet moments, the young woman who had often sat beneath the tree found herself reflecting anew. She saw Job not merely as a distant figure of ancient text, but as a living echo woven through their everyday lives. Acts of kindness, small and steady, the unspoken endurance threaded through sorrow and healing alike, these were Job's true legacy. Not the trials alone, but the refusal to be broken, the steadfast hope standing firm as seasons shifted. The village's prosperity was no longer measured in harvest alone, nor in coin, nor in the fleeting triumphs of survival. Instead, it was the richness of deep roots, quiet connections that wove the people tightly together. It was the fruit of love and patience, nurtured day by day, season by season. The gentle resilience that bore them onward, even when shadows lingered. One afternoon, the healer paused her gathering and closed her eyes. The breeze lifted the scent of herbs and earth, a lullaby of the natural world embracing her. She breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of the orchard beneath her feet. Life here was a slow unfolding, a whispered song almost too soft to hear, yet vital and true. Every leaf, every tender shoot, every fragile bloom was an unspoken prayer answered. Though the past's hardships had carved their marks, they no longer defined the village. Instead, those scars were woven into the living tapestry of growth and renewal. Each wound had, in its own way, deepened the soil for new life to take root. Gratitude bloomed alongside sorrow, weaving an unspoken promise of care and connection. As twilight wrapped the world in a gentle hush, the village settled beneath the great tree once more. Children's voices softened into yawns and whispers. Adults spoke no more than necessary, content in the quiet warmth of presence. The orchard's leaves stirred softly, a gentle pattering like the heartbeat of the earth itself. In those moments, beneath the vast branches heavy with the fruit of many seasons, a profound peace held sway. The old stories of suffering and endurance were threads in a larger fabric, one of silent hope, steady love, and the enduring strength that comes from shared humanity. Here, in this place shaped by time and care, the prosperity of Job lived on, not as a distant legend, but as a daily humble reality. It was found not in grandeur or in wealth, but in the quiet roots of faith that grew deep, the open hands ready to give, and the hearts that endured through every passing day. The orchard stood, a silent guardian, its branches stretched wide beneath the sky. It held each story, each prayer, each small act of kindness like a precious seed. And, from that sacred soil, the village blossomed, gently, patiently, into a future bound by hope, love, and the quiet strength born of shared hardship. The peace that lingered here was a soft melody, an unspoken promise that even in the hardest of times, life could be renewed. Beneath the great tree, the people rested, knowing that the legacy of Job was alive in each breath, each step, and each beating heart. As night deepened, whispered winds stirred the leaves, carrying with them the soft echoes of prayers spoken long ago. And in that sacred stillness, the village found its truest prosperity, an enduring light that no shadow could ever dim.